"2:30 a.m., May 10, 2025. A single phone call shatters the uneasy silence of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's residence in Islamabad. The army chief is on the line, his voice uncharacteristically grim. "Janab, Chaklala has been hit."
नौ और 10 की दरमियानी रात में तकरीबन 2:30 बजे सिपा सलार जनरल सैयद आसिम मुनीर ने मुझे सिक्योर फ़ोन पे मुझे बताया कि वज़ीर-ए-आज़म साहब, हिंदुस्तान ने अपने बैलिस्टिक मिसाइल अभी लॉन्च किए हैं, एक नूर खान एयरपोर्ट पे गिरा है और कुछ और दूसरे इलाकों में गिरे हैं।
Nur Khan Air Base, Pakistan's most prestigious air facility, was burning. Not just a symbolic strike, it was surgical and devastating. India had done what was unthinkable.
It was building up. After the atrocity on 22nd April in Pahalgam, I think like everybody else, I was also sure that there will be an Indian reaction.
But the symbolic nature of hitting Nur Khan, and the second was Sargodha, while others are tactical operational bases, but these two are strategic bases, right? In terms of proximity to Rawalpindi,
that the bases have been struck with such precision and such across Pakistan in terms of numbers, in terms of geographical spread, and in terms of strategic importance of some of the bases. That is what was, game-changing.
Nur Khan Air Base, home to Pakistan's VIP transport fleet, intelligence assets and elite air units. For decades, this installation stood untouched, sheltered behind the red lines of nuclear deterrence. But Operation Sindoor has redefined those lines. What began as a bold strike on terror camps now looked unmistakably like a direct message to Rawalpindi.
Let me put this into perspective. For us, experienced anchors who have covered conflicts, this was uncharted territory. This was territory that really rewrote nuclear doctrine or the engagement between nuclear powers. It was rewritten because a message had been sent to a state sponsoring terror, a nuclear-tipped state, that we are not going to be held to by your nuclear blackmail. We were witnessing history as we were covering one of the biggest stories in a decade. Now, while speaking to a host of experts, it was becoming very clear to us, apparent, that India had pummeled Pakistan into submission.
It certainly caught the world by surprise, and they will have to take notice because it's been demonstrated on the ground that any act of terror will be treated as almost like an act of war, and that will be retaliated to. So this is now the new normal.
And West needs to particularly see this because they've been arming Pakistan and now China is arming them. So the world needs to take notice. If they are serious about terrorism, they need to take notice of epicenter of terrorism and take their action strongly.
even the mightiest military in the world, when it has to carry out strike at 11 disparate, geographically separated areas, and thereafter carry out a hit which succeeds, has never happened before.
As the night of May 9th faded into the early hours of May 10th, something extraordinary happened. Something no military strategist in Islamabad had prepared for. Indian air power, relentless and unyielding, descended again.
I think when the strikes went on to the 11 airfields at the same time, that was one time their entire political military structure would have actually crumbled.
They tried their best. The lack of damage on our side is ample proof that how strong our air defense was, how well we were integrated in our overall capability to defend.
First came the wave that struck Nur Khan, but it didn't end there. Within hours, Pakistan's prized military infrastructure was under a coordinated aerial siege. Murid, Rafiqui, Sargodha. Bases that hadn't seen combat since 1971 were now being pounded with precision munitions. The unspoken pact that air bases were sacrosanct was now rubble.
News is coming in thick and fast.
Pakistan occupied Kashmir as well as inside Pakistan have been struck. 9 different locations have been targeted by the Indian Army.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Each of the scalp and hammer bombs locked in on their unsuspecting quarry.
We have targeted the length and breadth of the adversary.
We will not submit to nuclear blackmail anymore, and that we will not make a distinction between terrorists and their sponsors. So if there's a terrorist attack, we will treat it as coming from the Pakistan government and the Pakistani state authorities. So these are all new doctrinal elements, the Indian policy, which the world has to get up and take notice and accept, because we have demonstrated it on the ground.
In terms of what it did to the doctrine, I think firstly it is a very restrained action on our part. Okay, it wasn't, if we were building for a convention conflict, what we did on 10th morning, we would have done on 8th.
In Islamabad, the mood turned from concern to dread. Prime Minister Sharif, bleary-eyed, entered a national security briefing at 4 a.m. Reports kept pouring in, one after the other. Pak bases pounded. A dozen sites targeted with clinical coordination. For the first time since the 1971 war, Pakistan's air capabilities exposed hollow. The army chief admitted what the intelligence couldn't hide. This was no limited skirmish. It was a campaign of dominance. Pakistan's airspace was no longer a shield.
There was no denying that Bharat had humiliated the Pakistani forces. It became very clear to us from the satellite images that we accessed following the attacks that the Pakistani side virtually pleaded with the Indian DGMO to call off the strikes. General Asim Munir's gambit had failed. Now, had he got the option of going back in time and stop one of the most dastardly attacks on Indian soil, perhaps he would have.
So while they have been trying for 4 years to do something, but this one misstep or maybe an attempt to overreach has cost them a certain degree of, has backfired on them. But the moment it's backfired, where have they gone? They went running to Uncle Sam.
And though this is as clear a signal as ever, that if you indulge in something like this, next time around the consequences will be even more devastating. So they need to pull back from the brink. I don't think so they will.
May 7, 1 a.m. Operation Sindoor begins. Indian jets evading radar, navigating valleys and hostile airspace. 9 terror hubs deep inside Pakistan. Bahawalpur, Murid ke, Muzaffarabad, Bhimbar, Gulpur, Sialkot, Chakamru, Kotli and Bagh are surgically targeted. The objective is to dismantle the infrastructure of cross-border terrorism with ruthless precision.
So for 2 weeks after the Pahalgam attacks, we were kind of anticipating this moment. We had fielded contingency teams. These were our first responders who were going to respond to the breaking news in case something happened overnight. But what followed was unimaginable. I mean, for all the talk about the proof that opposition was asking for after the Balakot strikes, for example, this particular attack left absolutely no room of doubt. Within minutes, and I still clearly, vividly remember this, the first visuals that we got of that stunning strike was from Bahawalpur, which was the headquarters of the Jaish-e-Mohammed. It sort of broke the back of this terror group. Those, to my mind, were really the defining images of that night.
In less than 40 minutes, multiple terror launch pads lie in ruin. But this wasn't merely retribution for the Pahalgam terror attack. It was a calculated shift in India's rules of engagement. This wasn't Jabbar Top Balakot. This was broader, bolder, bloodier.
Till their drones came, started attacking, till their loitering munitions started attacking, initially a very restrained reaction was given in terms of just attacking their radars close to the border. When on the second night more attacks were undertaken, then some more air defense radars were attacked. It is only when our airfields were stuck. So look at the kind of restraint that was exercised.
What people don't understand is the escalation control. Something impossible to achieve. This escalation control which the political military establishment of our country has been able to achieve is something even I am surprised, having war gamed this so many times.
India's strategic and military resolve is boldly declared to the world. Operation Sindoor gets a new dimension with its press briefing. Colonel Sophia Qureshi, Wing Commander Vyomika Singh are chosen by India to tell the world. India strikes the heart of Pak-backed terror. The proof is there for the world to see.
ऑपरेशन सिंदूर 22 अप्रैल को पहलगाम में हुए विभत्स आतंकवादी हमले के शिकार मासूम नागरिकों व उनके परिवारों को न्याय देने के लिए लॉन्च किया गया था। इस कार्रवाई में 9 टेररिस्ट कैंप्स को टारगेट किया गया और पूरी तरह से इसे बर्बाद किया गया।
22nd April 2025, Pahalgam, a place known for its natural beauty, became a graveyard of innocence. "26 Indians were killed in cold blood. They were targeted not just for being Indian, but for their faith. It wasn't an attack. It was a message, and New Delhi heard it loud and clear."
For us covering the power corridors of New Delhi, we immediately recognized a pattern. This attack came right in the middle of American Vice President J.D. Vance's visit to India. There have been other attacks when American dignitaries visited India, but this was something we hadn't imagined. Knowing how this Indian government always responds to crisis, we knew that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was already planning his next moves from Jeddah, where he was on a state visit. We soon learned that the Prime Minister was cutting short his foreign visit and rushing back to India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi cut short his visit, returned to India from Saudi Arabia within hours. By dawn, the Cabinet Committee on Security had convened in South Block. Decisions that are often whispered in the corridors of power were now being taken aloud. Home Minister Amit Shah was dispatched immediately to Srinagar and Pahalgam on the very day of the attack. India was not just mourning, it was mobilizing. India's decisive action came on the 7th of May. This had shaken Islamabad. The line of control was active within hours.
such house in Murid where you can see the window has come out, the glass panels are shattered. But look at this, shrapnels from the artillery shell landed here and then caused all of this destruction of this house. This entire structure here has completely gotten demolished because of the massive ceasefire violation.
May 8th, late evening. Pakistan retaliates with drone and missile strikes, targeting 14 Indian military sites. All attacks are neutralized. The integrated defense grid and S-400 systems lock onto threats with chilling efficiency. India's Tri-Services Chiefs leading India's defense measures from the Special Control Room. A novel air defense system serving as India's very own Iron Dome.
We were mentally prepared to report from the war zone, and whatever we saw was unprecedented. But then we knew of the sort of challenges that are coming our way, and it was exciting as well.
While the border towns were simmering, back in Delhi, the diplomatic clock is ticking quickly. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar meets with Saudi and Iranian counterparts. The message is blunt. India has responded. If Pakistan escalates, we will not hesitate. The red lines are being redrawn. Foreign Minister's message to the West on India's right to defend itself has always been unequivocal.
India gave a firm, resolute, and measured response that destroying the relevant terror centers and launch pads. India's right to defend its people against acts of terror has also been recognized by countries across the world.
Well, in a stark contrast, Pakistan's diplomatic outreach was a total disaster. Pakistani ministers and in fact former ministers like Khwaja Asif, Ishaq Dars and Bilawal Bhuttos went to Western media and ended up embarrassing themselves. The ignominy that Pakistani politicians brought onto themselves was unprecedented. In fact, these comments were massively damaging for Pakistan's image and were counterproductive to the lies and narrative that the country was trying to create.
You do admit, sir, that Pakistan has had a long history of backing and supporting and training and funding these terrorist organizations.
Well, we have been doing this dirty work for the United States for about 3 decades, and West, including Britain.
As far as what the defense minister said, I don't think that it's a secret that Pakistan has a past as far as extremist groups are concerned.
Let's start with this very specific allegation of 5 fighter jets shot down. Where's the evidence for that, sir?
It's all over the social media, on Indian social media, not on our social media. The debris of these jets fell into Indian occupied Kashmir.
Pakistan's attacks continue on the 9th of May. 300 to 400 drones launched from Pakistan from Leh in the north to Sir Creek in the south. India's air defense systems lit up the skies. Turkish origin drones are spotted, intercepted. In retaliation, India deploys Harop loitering drones, taking out command and control posts deep inside Pakistani territory.
At this point, we were prepared for the long road ahead in terms of coverage. On hindsight, we were prepared for it lasting much longer than 88 hours. Modern Bharat hadn't seen such a warfare being broadcast on live television. With each passing hour, we realized how Indian forces had not only successfully thwarted Pakistani attacks, but the scale of Bharat's retaliatory strikes became very evident. It was only a matter of time before the Pakistanis threw in the towel.
It is only after that strike that our hit has taken, our offensive action in terms of striking 9 of their targets right across, including Sargodha, including Chaklala, including Jacobabad, Bulari, all important targets, not only targeting their air defense centers, but also targeting their high value assets on ground, targeting the AWC hangar, targeting the F-16 shelters, targeting their launch capability in terms of runways.
10th of May, 3 a.m. The gloves are truly off. Indian jets strike more Pakistani bases in Murid, Rafiqui, Sargodha. Rawalpindi finds itself cornered. For the first time in decades, key Pakistani air assets are under threat, and panic spreads within Pak Army establishment.
Breaking news, India has now struck Pakistan in Operation Sindoor.
Each of the scalp and hammer bombs locked in on their unsuspecting quarry within seconds of the strike. But what pushed Pakistan to the edge was a precision strike, we all believe, on Sargodha Air Base, which is close to the Kirana Hills, Pakistan's nuclear storage facility. And that sent a message of intent to the Pakistanis that today we are struck here, tomorrow we might even strike your nuclear assets. Again, the Pak misinformation machinery jumped into action, spreading fear of a nuclear radiation leak, and all the fears were soon laid to rest. But this was a pivotal moment of the operation that broke really the back of Pakistan's obduracy, its resistance.
The Sargodha thing which happened is, look at the layers. You had the Chinese layer to observe. You had all the private satellites, imageries, number of international systems giving feed to the enemy. You had, I think, the assets which were somewhere in Sargodha had certain degree of American assets also to forewarn.
First phone call between India and Pakistan, the DGMOs are talking. Now, just break this down for us. DGMOs talking, what does this mean?
Pakistan wants de-escalation. Situation is, in fact, bad in the country, and Pakistan wants to meet Indian side. This was the connection between the DGMOs on both the sides, and they have spoken on hotline.
While India decimated more than half a dozen Pak air bases, the man who helms affairs in Rawalpindi is hiding in a bunker. His close aides were feeding him information about humiliation of his forces. Many of his personnel killed, his air defense system in tatters, and morale of his forces at an all-time low. He waves the white flag in reluctance. Pak DGMO rushes to call it a truce. India achieves its mission. Pakistan admits defeat.
You know, this was a particular sort of defining moment in our coverage, and I still clearly remember it was a little before noon on Saturday, the 10th of May. Our security affairs editor, Manoj Gupta, he was leading the coverage for us on the reporting front. He was the first person to break this piece of information that the Pakistani DGMO had called his Indian counterpart, the Indian DGMO. He had dialed the hotline and then sought a truce. And then within moments, Islamabad's surrender was swift.
While New Delhi was preparing to make the announcement, an overeager Donald Trump jumped to make the announcement to the world, but India was quick to shut down any attempts to claim a third-party mediation.
Military operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today.
In Pakistan, the reality was sinking in. There were murmurs in the National Assembly of humiliation. Unlike India, there were explicit voices in the political establishment making a mockery of PM Sharif.
अगर शेरों का लश्कर उसका सरदार गीदड़ हो तो वो नहीं लड़ सकते, वो जंगे हार लेते हैं। वजीर आजम, जब आपका लीडर बुज़दिल हो, वो मोदी का नाम ना ले सके, उसको आप क्या पैगाम दे रहे बॉर्डर पे लड़ने वाले उस जवान को? हमारी कमी है, हम मजबूर हैं, हम गुनाहगार हैं, लेकिन रब्बे काबा हम तेरे हबीब के उम्मती हैं, खुदा का वास्ता हमसे रहम का भला फरमा।
This is largely an air battle, if you can call it that. So if they think they have done well, then the person who should have been promoted is the Chief of the Air Staff. He should have been promoted as Marshal of the Air Force. What did Asim Munir do? He presided over a defeat. And then being appointed as Field Marshal was basically to cover the loss, the decisive military loss that Pakistan suffered, is to cover up for the domestic audience.
Operation Sindoor, clearly exposing Pakistan's misinformation. India relies on satellite images and recovery of ammunition. General Munir's colleagues clutch at straws. Global experts clearly calling it a victory for India.
भारत माता की
Operation Sindoor was partially successful in regards of destroying the terror infrastructure, but highly successful in regards of significantly weakening Pakistan to the degree where it became unable to defend itself from conventional strikes of the Indian armed forces, and had no ability to strike back upon India, and had no other option but to sue for ceasefire.
The main takeaway from the operation has been Bharat's commitment to advancing homegrown defense innovation. Akash Tir, Bharat's indigenously developed air defense system, stands as a symbol of self-reliance and exceptional aerial security. What sets Akash Tir apart is its capability to integrate data from various radars and sensors, which it then relays to the command and control centers of the Air Force. This integration allows for the creation of a secure cloud or dome that synergizes efforts across the board. The system detects and identifies threats, and it commands fire control radars to engage them. It coordinates with multiple air defense units, making the entire process smooth and automated. So, we have one node of Akash Tir that is managing multiple units of radars, sensors and other AD equipments and is securing a large area.
India issues a blunt statement. The era of restraint is over. Civilians were attacked, religious sites were hit, drone warfare was weaponized. India declares new norm in its military retaliatory action.
ऑपरेशन सिंदूर ने आतंक के खिलाफ लड़ाई में एक नई लकीर खींच दी है, एक नया पैमाना, न्यू नॉर्मल तय कर दिया है। पहला, भारत पर आतंकी हमला हुआ तो मुंह तोड़ जवाब दिया जाएगा। दूसरा, कोई भी न्यूक्लियर ब्लैकमेल भारत नहीं सहेगा। तीसरा, हम आतंक की सरपरस्त सरकार और आतंक के आकाओं को अलग अलग नहीं देखेंगे।
Operation Sindoor right now is just being paused. But its action lasted 88 hours. Its consequences will ripple for decades. India has changed the equation. Precision strikes, rapid escalation, firm diplomacy. Pakistan's deniability has been shattered, and the region has entered a new chapter where terror will no longer go unanswered, and the cost of provocation will be paid more than in kind.
आज देश निराशा के अंधकार से निकलकर विश्वास के उजाले में तिरंगा फहरा रहा है। 22 तारीख के हमले के जवाब में हमने 22 मिनट में आतंकियों के 9 सबसे बड़े ठिकाने तबाह कर दिए। दुनिया ने और देश के दुश्मनों ने भी देख लिया, जब सिंदूर बारूद बन जाता है तो नतीजा क्या होता है। और आर्मी के सभी जाबाजों, बीएसएफ के अपने शूरवीरों को सैल्यूट करता हूं। आपके पराक्रम की वजह से आज ऑपरेशन सिंदूर की गूंज हर कोने में सुनाई दे रही है।
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
उत्तर प्रदेश के मुख्यमंत्री श्रीमान योगी आदित्यनाथ जी, केंद्रीय मंत्रिमंडल के मेरे साथी,